Okay, so we're doing great. So let's kind of quick refresh this one last time. So in the plants we've covered, mosses and ferns, then seedless plants that all reproduce with spores. They have a sporophyte that produces a sporangium, one kind, that produces one kind of spore, that produces one kind of gametophyte, that produces two kinds of gametes. To increase outcrossing and dispersal and in the process genetic variation. Um, with the seed plants, or what are sometimes called the heterosporous plants, the group we just covered, or the homosporous plants. For the heterosporous plants, or the seed plants, we're going to have two kinds of sporangia, making two kinds of spores, making two kinds of gametophytes. That's the key. And we give the gametophytes special names. Pollen for the male one, female is called seed. And then just as before, they produce two kinds of gametes. And the strategy here basically is outcrossing and dispersal. So here's pictures of different pollen. Pollen can be blown in the wind, dispersed. Here's some pollen on a car. So this is pine tree pollen. It's typically yellow. Here we have different grass pollen. If you're allergic to grass or ragweed pollen or just have allergies to pollen, it's the male gametophyte that's responsible. You can blame the male gametophytes if you wish. And then lots of uh, pollen is dispersed by animals, and especially when we get to the flowering plants, many will be dispersed by bees or butterflies or hummingbirds and other kinds of animals. And you'll see why in a minute. It's really awesome. The strategy with pollen is basically produce a ton of it, knowing that realistically most of it's never going to be successful, but hopefully some of it is. And then the seeds are the things that the pollen is eventually going to find, whether it's in a pine cone or whether it's in a flower. Um, and then the seed the seed's going to produce the eggs, and after fertilization, then the seed itself, with the baby retained inside that seed, retaining the embryo inside the parent gametophyte, which in this case is the seed, is going to be dispersed. And again, that can be dispersed also by the wind, or in the case of coconuts, by water, or by animals as well. And in the process, we're increasing outcrossing and dispersal. Okay, so plants are really remarkably efficient when it comes to reproduction. So let's see how this plays out in the life cycle. And just a reminder, seeds are the female gametophyte. That is, in a way, the organism, but it's really a part of the parent sporophyte plant. And if it's been fertilized inside that seed is the baby future sporophyte. Okay, so when we're looking at a fertilized seed, we really have baby sporophyte inside parent gametophyte seed, still on grandparent sporophyte plant. Okay, it's really complicated. Pollen simpler, it's simply the male gametophyte. So let's see how this works. Again, we've seen these many times, but they get easier the more you see them. We're going to take a seaweed, add gametangia, retain the embryo. That's the world of seedless non-vascular plants. So like mosses, they are adding the gametangia, or retain the embryo, but we're gametophyte dominant. Now we're going to switch to sporophyte dominant, and it's the same. That's an easy step. Now, what we're going to do is take this and have two kinds of sporangia, two kinds of spores, and two kinds of gametophytes, and everything down here will stay the same. Okay, so we're just taking what we had before. Two sporangia, two spores, two gametophytes, everything else the same. Now it's going to look really complicated because we're going to break this branch up into two branches, but it's not that complicated. Let's do it. Here's the life cycle of a pine tree. It looks way more complicated, doesn't it? But it's not. All we're doing is we have our sporophyte. We have two kinds of sporangia. We'll use fancy names here, but we'll just call them the male sporangia, the female sporangia. The male sporangia does meiosis to make the male spore. It's going to grow up into pollen. The female sporangium is going to produce the female gametophyte, which is here. Okay, sorry, I have this backwards. Here's the sporangium. The sporangium does meiosis to make the female spore, which is right here, and that's going, when it divides, is going to become the seed. Okay, the female gametophyte. Then what's going to happen is the pollen is going to get dispersed, in this case by wind. It's going to blow away just like it did in the mosses and the ferns. The spore is still dispersed exactly the same way. It's coated by sporopollenin. Reminder, sporopollenin covers spores and pollen, and now you can see why. Because pollen is a special spore. Okay? It's the male spore. And then this pollen is going to be dispersed, hopefully finds the cone. And remember, all of this stuff here, all of this middle part here is all happening right inside here. Okay, so it's kind of been opened up and blasted apart, but you'll notice these arrows are showing all of this is happening inside the female cone. The pollen finds its way to the female cone where it's made sporangia, it's made its spores that have become the seeds. The seed then does mitosis to produce the egg. The pollen gets there, produces the sperm by mitosis. Here they're combining together, but it's really mitosis makes the sperm and eggs. Fertilization fertilizes the sperm and eggs. Then we have the future sporophyte. It's one cell. Then it grows by mitosis into the embryo. So it was a zygote. Now it's an embryo. Here's the baby sporophyte inside the seed, which is the mother gametophyte. And all of this is still within the grandparent cone of the grandparent sporophyte. After fertilization, and only after fertilization, does the cone open up, because at that time the cone's job is done, and then the fertilized seed, the seed's the gametophyte, but inside it is the baby embryo, is now dispersed again, either by wind or animals, and then the process starts over. Way more complicated than this, but really not. Two sporangia, two spores, two gametophytes, basically the same. Two sporangia, two spores, two gametophytes, we call them fancy names, pollen and seeds, and then just as before, the gametophytes make the sperm and eggs, and the process starts over. Now there are some twists. If you look carefully, you'll notice the pollen here has only two nuclei, okay? It only has a few cells. And so remember this idea of sporophyte dominance with the reduction of the gametophyte? By the time we get to the gymnosperms, the gametophyte almost doesn't exist because it's almost not multicellular anymore. Okay? So very, very important there. Now, all we're going to do when we switch from gymnosperms to angiosperms is switch cones with flowers. That's all we're going to do. And then we'll add fruit. Okay? Um, and so it looks pretty similar. Okay, we've got our parent sporophyte. It has its special sporangia that produce special spores that become the pollen and the seeds. The pollen is going to be dispersed. It's going to find its way into the female part where the seed makes the egg. This pollen now makes the sperm. They fertilize each other. You now have the baby embryo zygote. It becomes the baby embryo inside the seed of the parent gametophyte, and all of this is in the flower of the parent grandparent sporophyte. And then something new happens. Instead of the cone opening, after fertilization, the flower becomes a fruit. The fruit has the baby in it and the seed around it, and in a way, the fruit is part of the flower. So it's three generations here: baby sporophyte, parent gametophyte seed, grandparent sporophyte, flower, fruit. And then this fruit gets dispersed with the seed inside of it and the baby inside of that, and the cycle starts over. Now, if you look carefully, there are some differences. There's this thing called double fertilization, which we're going to skip. But double fertilization, if you're interested, is in the textbook. Basically, what happens is that we produce basically two kinds of sperm, and both sperms are going to fertilize, and so we kind of get a double fertilization. It's a little bit weird, and you get something called endosperm, which is triploid. Again, for this class, we can skip that and ignore it, but basically what we have here is a diploid and a haploid that unite together in a fertilization, and this creates the food storage that if you eat peanuts or beans or corn, it's the nutritious part, or wheat, it's the nutritious part that helps provide extra nutrition to the baby in a way. You do not need to know that for this class. It'll be in the textbook, but I'm not going to ask you about that stuff. Okay, that's kind of more advanced. I want to keep this pretty simple. Reproduction in gymnosperms, we've got two sporangia, two spores, pollen and seeds, or different gametophytes, and everything else is the same, just occurring in a cone. In the flowering plants, same thing, two sporangia, two spores, two gametophytes called pollen and seeds, and everything else is the same. The difference here, instead of cones, we're doing it in flowers that become fruit when it's fertilized. Okay, now, if you really want to practice this, go on D2L. Get the same picture with all the words missing, identify everything that's haploid, everything that's diploid. Where's the spore? Where's the sporophyte? Where's the male spore? Where's the female spore? Where's the seed? Where's the pollen? And practice, make sure you're familiar with that. Where's mitosis? Where's meiosis? Where's fertilization? Okay. Pollination is basically not a cellular process, so we're going to call this mitosis, but basically we're moving that pollen. Okay. You can do this. It's just going to take some practice. So, let's call this module done because this was a lot to cover, and then we'll talk a bit more about cones and flowers and fruits in our last reproductive.